The airport security line had never been this quiet before. As the elderly man passed through the metal detector, something in his bag triggered the alarm. The TSA officer barked sharply, "Open your bag!" When the man's trembling hands revealed the metal object, someone in the waiting crowd stood up. And from that moment, everyone at the airport would learn who this old man really was. It was 7:30 a.m. at LaGuardia Airport, and the security checkpoint buzzed with its usual morning chaos. Business travelers in sharp suits, families heading to vacation destinations, and college students all waited in line, lost in their own worlds. Nobody paid attention to the elderly man. Robert Henderson, 78 years old, with neatly combed gray hair, wearing an old but clean jacket, carried a small carry-on bag. TSA officer Marcus Johnson had been doing this job for 15 years. He'd encountered every type of person and seen every kind of item. He'd noticed the elderly man entering the line, but considered him just another ordinary passenger, until it was time to pass through the metal detector. Robert placed his bag on the conveyor belt and walked slowly through the metal detector. The alarm sounded. Marcus looked up. "Sir, please step back and empty your pockets." Robert nodded and checked his pockets. A few coins, an old wallet, and a keychain came out. He tried again. The alarm sounded once more. "Sir, we need to open your bag." Marcus's voice was slightly harsher. The fatigue of the morning shift and the growing line were beginning to test his patience. Robert's hands trembled slightly as he took his bag. Whether from age or nervousness, no one could tell. When he unzipped it, several personal items emerged: a clean shirt, medicine bottles, an old book. At the bottom, wrapped in a small piece of cloth, was a metal object. Marcus took it and unwrapped the cloth. Inside was an old, tarnished metal piece. The writing on the metal was still readable, but Marcus couldn't quite understand what it was. "What is this, sir?" Marcus's voice echoed through the airport noise. Just as Robert was about to answer, a middle-aged man waiting 20 meters back in line began moving forward. David Miller, 52 years old, was a former Air Force pilot. He now worked for commercial airlines and was waiting for a duty flight that morning. David's eyes caught the metal piece in Marcus's hand. At first, he wasn't sure, but as he got closer, his heart began to race. That metal, that symbol. It couldn't be possible. "Excuse me," David's voice carried, making other passengers turn. "Excuse me, officer." Marcus turned his head. David didn't seem like an ordinary person. His posture, his way of speaking, everything carried an air of discipline. "Sir, please wait in your line," Marcus said. "Officer, may I see that medal?" There was insistence in David's voice. Marcus hesitated. Normally he wouldn't allow such interruptions, but there was something about David's manner that inspired confidence. David slowly approached, and when he saw the medal, his breath caught. His eyes welled up, and he looked at Robert. The elderly man was also looking at him, with a familiar expression in his eyes. "Sir," David's voice was slightly above a whisper, but filled with respect. "This medal, isn't this a Purple Heart?" Robert nodded slightly. 1969, he said quietly. David's hands began to tremble. He examined the medal more closely and saw the engravings on the back. R. Henderson, 1st Cavalry Division. Silence fell over the security checkpoint area. Other passengers were trying to understand what was happening. Marcus returned the medal and looked at both David and Robert. "Sir," David turned to Robert, "I'm David Miller. I served in the Gulf in 1990. I'm a pilot." Robert smiled. "I know, son. It shows in your bearing." David took a breath. "Sir, our generation grew up listening to your stories. Without your sacrifice, It wasn't sacrifice, Robert interrupted. It was duty. Marcus still couldn't fully understand what was happening, but he could feel the atmosphere changing. Other TSA officers were beginning to approach as well. David turned to Marcus. "Officer, this man is a Vietnam veteran. He has a Purple Heart medal. This medal was given to him for being wounded in combat." Marcus's expression changed. Until that moment, he was just an officer following procedures, but now he understood that a real hero was standing before him. "Sir, I apologize," Marcus turned to Robert. "I had to check it as part of procedure." "No problem, son." Robert took back the medal. "You're doing your job." David was still emotional. "Sir, where are you traveling to?" "Washington, D.C., Robert replied. "I'm going to visit the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. I go every year." David's eyes filled again. "Sir, I'm also going to D.C. I think we're on the same flight." Robert smiled. "Then we can chat on the way." Meanwhile, other passengers waiting in line began to understand the situation. A mother was explaining to her child what a Purple Heart meant. An elderly couple looked at Robert with respect. A young student took out his phone to research Purple Hearts. Marcus helped Robert pack his belongings. "Sir, I apologize again. Thank you for your service." Robert nodded as he put his items back in his bag. "We all do our duty, son." David stood beside Robert. "Sir, I have a premium economy ticket on the plane. We can switch yours." "No need," Robert smiled. "I'm comfortable in economy." "No, sir, I insist." Robert looked at David and saw his sincerity. "All right, thank you." As the pair walked through security toward the gate, David asked, "Sir, if you can share, where did you serve in Vietnam?" Robert stopped and looked out the window. "Mekong Delta, 1969. I was wounded during an ambush while trying to save my buddies." "How many people did you save?" "Numbers don't matter. What matters is not leaving anyone behind." David nodded. He felt very small in front of this man. When they reached the gate area, David asked Robert, "Sir, would you like some coffee?" "Sure, thank you." While David was getting the coffee, Robert sat watching outside through the window. Perhaps those old days, his friends, the losses were in his mind. "Sir," David said, as he handed over the coffee, "I'm a pilot, but meeting people like you is a privilege for me." Robert took a sip of his coffee. "Son, I'm not special. Millions of young men did their duty in that era. Some returned, some didn't. I was lucky." "Not lucky, sir. Brave." Robert smiled. "Courage is doing the right thing even when you're afraid." They announced boarding for the plane. David helped Robert stand up. "Sir, we can talk more on the plane." "Of course, son." As they walked toward the plane, David was behind Robert, but not just him. Several other people from the gate area were following them, too. TSA officer. Marcus had come to see them off despite being on break. At the plane's entrance, the flight attendant greeted Robert. David had briefly explained the situation to her. "Sir, welcome aboard. It's a privilege for us." The flight attendant smiled. Robert was embarrassed. It wasn't necessary. "Sir, it's an honor for us." When the plane took off, David and Robert were sitting side by side. David was curious. "Sir, who will you be visiting at the memorial?" Robert's eyes drifted to the clouds. "My teammates. I go to find their names on the wall. Every year I go and talk to them." David's heart ached. "Sir, they would be proud of you." "I don't know, son. Sometimes I think I'm the one who's proud of them." They talked throughout the flight. David listened to Robert's stories. Not just war stories, but stories of coming home, stories of continuing to live, stories of learning to live with loss. When they landed in Washington, David thanked Robert one last time. "Sir, meeting you was one of the most meaningful experiences of my life." Robert shook his hand. "For me too, pilot." David accompanied Robert to the taxi stand. As the elderly man drove away in the taxi, David watched him go. The encounter that began at the airport that day had changed David's life. Now, on every flight, looking at every passenger, he never forgot that everyone had a story. As for Robert, when he reached the memorial, he found his friends' names, talked to them, and returned home carrying the warmth of a new friendship. Sometimes life's most precious moments happen in places you least expect, with people you never expected to meet. What happened at the airport that day wasn't just two men meeting. It was the past meeting the present, sacrifice being appreciated, and intergenerational respect being reborn.